Hello and welcome to another episode of Smart Freight Conversations, where we share interesting and important updates about freight decarbonization and the drive towards a zero emissions logistics industry. I'm Andy Golding, Head of Academy here at Smart Freight Center, or SFC, as you may hear us call it, and I'm your host for today. This is part 2 of a 2-part series exploring the market trends in road freight electrification. If you've already joined us for part 1, then you would know that joining me for this series is my colleague and senior technical manager here at Smart Freight Center, Tharsis Teoh. Tharsis, thank you for joining us for episode 2.
Hello.
Hello. Good to have you back. So in the first episode, we looked at things like adoption barriers, cost considerations, infrastructure. Now we're going to look a little bit more at the trends, some pros and cons, the benefits, trade-offs, total cost of ownership. I'm going to dive straight in with a question around the pros and cons and the future trends. How do electric trucks perform compared to diesel trucks in range, payload capacity, and suitability for different freight routes?
This is a good question. So on average, electric trucks have a range of between 200 to 300 kilometers. Of course, depends on where you're driving and the kind of amount of battery capacity you've installed on your truck. Some newer models can go up to 500 kilometers and even more. There's plenty of range for urban and regional transport, but sort of hits the limit for long-haul transport. So the models that we see currently, I think, like I mentioned, they're for urban, regional, port drayage, anything that is really regular in terms of the distance it's traveled a day, and usually in a single shift. If you go double shift, then of course the amount of distance traveled is a bit higher. But to improve the economics, as well as to increase the driving range, fleet operator can use a variety of different charging strategies. So in the first point I made was basically about how much can you travel on a single charge. You can also charge during the day so that you can extend the charge, the range that you have. And some types of charging strategies, like charging during a break or at destinations of your customers while nothing really is happening besides loading, can have just a minimal impact on operations, but can extend the range by 150 to 300 kilometers, depending on the power that you have installed there. And I think ideally the industry should move towards charging infrastructure that supports this kind of flexible, high usage operations.
I think the charging strategy is such an interesting one because it almost feels like one of the most critical considerations in the feasibility of long-haul electric trucking. And there are solutions. There is a way to build a charging strategy that facilitates long-haul trucking. Obviously, in episode 1, we spoke about some of the corridors where we're looking at and exploring long-haul trucking with charging opportunities. And we did also say in the previous episode that this is a developing story. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of considerations to be had. And one of the things that we also spoke about in the previous episode was that the startup costs for electrification are significant because the cost comparison between electric vehicles and diesel vehicles is significant. Mm-hmm. So when we look at TCO, or total cost of ownership, if we're factoring in fuel savings and maintenance and incentives, are electric trucks now cost competitive for most freight organizations, or are we getting to that point?
Yeah, it's both now and also hopefully in the future. The key metric here, and it's something that you mentioned, including all the different factors during operations as well, is the total cost of ownership, which adds up all the costs over a truck's lifetime. However, when we're talking about cost competitiveness, we should also think about, from different perspectives of the buyers, different types of buyers. Small, medium-sized operators, they're much more sensitive to the initial purchase price than just the total cost of ownership, because they need to be able to afford the vehicle itself. And currently, this is at least double the price of a diesel truck, which is a big barrier. Small, medium, one of the reasons why they're sensitive to this is because they also rely less on external financing. So they don't have maybe like the best options in terms of getting or reducing the upfront costs. So they have to think about that purchase price itself. Yeah, the total cost of ownership is a bit more complicated. It covers a couple of cost categories, right? And the idea behind thinking about this metric is that we're trying to balance the high costs of the investment with the potential cost savings over the lifetime of the vehicle as you're using the vehicle. Our own analysis shows that cost competitiveness varies a lot according to the transport operation type and the region that you're operating in, and because of the different conditions that are available in these areas. So I just mentioned a couple of conditions here. Substantial subsidies or incentives, both the vehicle and charging infrastructure, can reduce the total cost of ownership quite substantially. An important indicator as well as a favorable ratio between charging service prices or electricity costs versus diesel prices, which are available there. And things like ETS2 or any sort of tax on diesel helps to change that ratio. And finally, I think waivers on access or toll costs for electric vehicles or low carbon vehicles is also an important one. So especially for the long haul, if you're running on long distance transport. And if we see these conditions align, we'll see electric trucking becoming more competitive with diesel. This doesn't mean that operators can have to just be passively reliant on conditions. There are ways to be creative and make the operation economical even in difficult conditions. And of course, the other thing to remember is we're always talking about costs, but we should also be thinking about business models. How can we increase our revenue for this particular electric truck transport service, which has its own value proposition, emissions reduction, cleaner operation, air quality, and all that.
I think that's really important, is looking beyond cost, looking to strategy. How do we make these strategic investments so we're not just focusing on the costs, but how do we operationalize the benefits of electrification as well?
Exactly.
If we look at a different kind of benefit, the environmental benefits, and some of the trade-offs, what is the net carbon benefit of an electric vehicle once manufacturing and production are considered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we look at the full life cycle from manufacturing to use, just disposal, electric trucks have a higher carbon footprint at the start, primarily because of the battery production. However, during the use phase, the diesel truck emits more because it's relying on fossil fuels primarily. This means there's a point where the total emissions of the diesel truck exceeds an electric vehicle. And this point, some estimates point to a break-even time at roughly around 2 to 3 years of use, assuming an average electricity mix. And this can be, of course, earlier if the electric truck primarily relies on renewable electricity.
Yep.
For logistics operations and for logistics operators who are primarily thinking about the emissions from fuel or energy use, the emissions savings is quite substantial. And of course, it depends on the grid mix and how you can procure renewable electricity. But it can be in the range of up to 85% to 90% reduction of carbon emissions. I would like to mention as well another huge benefit for electric trucks is simply that they have zero tailpipe emissions. And this is a major health and social benefit to the populations and for communities around logistics hubs that suffer from air pollution. And that is, I think, something that we don't talk about often, but really has a very direct impact to the people that live around major traffic hubs.
We spoke earlier about the fact that this is a human transition. We also spoke about it in episode 1 that this impacts people, and I think we can't ignore the benefits to communities. Exactly as you say, communities surrounding logistics hubs who have direct health benefits from the transition to electrification. And if we're going for a zero emission logistics industry, freight decarbonization is about the world at large. And I think that's a benefit it's critical and should not be understated or underestimated. What about the technical innovations on the horizon? We've just looked at, I mean, you've just said that, an electric truck can give us an 85 to 90% reduction in lifetime emissions. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if we look at some of the innovations on the horizon, so what are some of the upcoming developments in terms of battery chemistry or megawatt charging or vehicle design that could transform freight electrification and potentially even accelerate the implementation thereof?
I think the industry is most eagerly anticipating better batteries with high energy density, but with lower production costs. I think this would solve most of the operational and financial challenges that fleet operators face at this point. The other thing that is happening already, but will still require quite a bit of testing and rollout and standardization, is megawatt charging. This is, it's in the early stages of testing, whether the vehicle, whether the battery can handle it well, what are the challenges that comes with megawatt charging itself. But definitely faster charging speeds would reduce the need for a huge battery capacity on board the vehicle, and reduce the downtime needed for charging, which would be good for fleet operators. I think the only challenge there is that we might see the problem being shifted up towards the grid capacity and the energy infrastructure as well that's necessary to support megawatt charging. If I could choose, I would choose to have better and cheaper batteries to really accelerate fleet electrification in the next 5 years.
Okay, so your wish, if there's a genie anywhere around here, your wish is better, cheaper batteries to really accelerate the transition.
Yeah.
And what about, we've spoken a lot in this episode and in the previous episode in this series about the importance of the main players coming to the table and working together to really stimulate this demand and create the feasibility around this. So when we look at policy and industry collaboration, what role should governments, trucks and manufacturers and logistics companies play together to speed up the shift?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge that we're undertaking. We're really at the early stages of a global effort to decarbonize freight. And the goal is no longer just saving money. In the past, we could rely on cost efficiency measures, which also improve fuel efficiency, which reduces reduced emissions. But now it's really like we need drastic action to reduce emissions itself. So I would add NGOs to the list of key players, by the way. They're often the ones that raise awareness and drive the transition, fill in the gaps where necessary, both technical as well as policy-wise. But governments have a pivotal role in creating the policy framework that allows market players to thrive while addressing the emissions. And what the two things that they help primarily, at least at the beginning, is to provide a direction of travel. Do we all understand the challenges well? Do we all agree on the solutions forward? And governments help to sort of funnel, all the market actors and also civil society actors into the right direction, or at least the same direction. The best processes which are involved in building these policy frameworks or the strategy for decarbonization for the sector will include all the key players, as well as including the logistics sector, both shippers and LSPs. Traditionally, they have been quite silent on which direction or what kind of technology the sector will need. But I think their voice is quite important, and we need to bring them to the table to provide input on policy, to help policymakers understand their challenges this particular group of stakeholders, their challenges, as well as to understand their willingness to change, and helping policymakers build a case for maybe even more drastic or ambitious plans to decarbonize or to electrify.
And I think one of the things that Smart Freight Center does, one of the things that I would say is our superpower as an organization, is we create that table for these parties to come together. And that is one of the things that the FEC, our Fleet Electrification Coalition, is doing. So for somebody listening, if they're going, I want to get involved, I want to add my voice to this conversation, how do they do that?
Well, it really depends on who this person is or what kind of organization they're running. But we welcome conversations with anyone. So if you're a logistics actor, if you're in finance, if you're an ecosystem builder, you're a manufacturer, you're a digital tools provider, or even policymaker, we welcome conversations with you, and we have some shells to put you in. We'll find a space, and we have very broad coalitions and diverse working groups attacking different aspects of fleet electrification challenges. And so, yeah, we welcome really the conversation. But if you are a shipper and you want to start already implementing change, please engage with us, join our projects. If you're not ready for projects, join our trainings. If you're not ready for trainings, just have a conversation with us and we can help direct you in the right path.
So I think it's safe to say that whichever actor you are, there is a seat at the table, at the FEC table for you. We welcome, to use your words, we welcome the conversations with everyone. And I think that is a super note to end part 2 of this 2-part series on market trends in road freight electrification on. Tharsis, thank you so much for joining me for these 2 episodes. And to our listeners, we hope to see you at the Smart Freight Center or FEC table soon. Until next time.